During the 1940s, millions of households slept through winter nights without central heating, electric blankets, or modern insulation. Yet people did not routinely freeze in their beds. They relied on a disciplined, methodical approach to bed layering that treated sleep as a controlled thermal environment. This was not folklore or guesswork. It was a practical system shaped by rationing, fuel shortages, wartime blackouts, and long-standing household knowledge passed down through generations. Understanding this method today offers more than historical insight. It provides a proven, low-energy way to retain body heat when modern systems fail or become unaffordable. This guide goes straight into how the system worked, layer by layer, and how it can be applied today without romanticizing or oversimplifying the reality of 1940s life. The mattress and base insulation were treated as heat foundations. The 1940s bed did not begin with sheets. The foundation mattered. Most mattresses were horsehair, cotton, wool, or straw-filled, all materials with natural insulating properties. Families understood that heat loss downward was just as dangerous as heat loss upward. To counter this, beds were often placed on wooden frames rather than metal, which conducted cold. Beneath the mattress, families commonly added thick quilts, folded blankets, or even old coats to block drafts rising from unheated floors. In colder regions, rugs or spare blankets were placed under the bed itself to reduce cold air circulation. This was standard practice, not an emergency measure. Today, this same principle applies by placing wool blankets, foam pads, or folded comforters between mattress and frame, especially when sleeping on metal or near concrete floors. The goal is to stop conductive heat loss before it begins. The bottom sheet was chosen for warmth, not softness. Cotton percale sheets were common, but in winter many families switched to brushed cotton, flannel, or linen blends that trapped air. The sheet was pulled tight to avoid cold pockets, and wrinkles were avoided because they allowed heat to escape unevenly. A poorly fitted sheet was considered wasteful in winter. Modern sleepers can replicate this by choosing flannel or thermal sheets and ensuring they are properly fitted. Even one well-chosen bottom sheet reduces the need for heavier top layers. The first blanket layer was for heat capture, not weight. The first layer above the sleeper was usually a lightweight wool blanket. Wool was preferred because it retained heat even when damp from body moisture and allowed airflow without chilling. This layer was tucked tightly along the sides of the mattress, forming a sealed envelope. The tuck mattered. Loose edges allowed warm air to escape and cold air to enter. This practice is still effective today. A thin wool blanket or wool blend placed directly over the sleeper and tucked firmly creates a stable heat pocket. The second layer provided controlled weight and compression. Above the wool layer came a heavier blanket, often another wool or a dense cotton blanket. This layer was not meant to add warmth by itself, but to compress the insulating air layers below. The added weight prevented movement during sleep, which reduced heat loss caused by shifting blankets. The top layer sealed the system. The final layer was usually a quilt, eider down, or thick comforter filled with cotton, wool, or feathers. This layer was spread wider than the bed and tucked under the mattress at the foot only, allowing moisture to escape upward while preventing drafts from below. The sides were often left looser than lower layers to avoid condensation build-up. This top layer functioned as a heat cap. In modern terms, it completed the insulation envelope. A duvet, heavy quilt, or layered comforter works well today. Head and neck insulation were non-negotiable. One of the most overlooked elements today was standard practice in the 1940s. People covered their heads. Nightcaps, scarves or wrapped shawls were common, especially for children and the elderly. Heat loss through the head and neck was well understood, even if not scientifically described. Rather than pulling blankets over the face, which, cause dampness and discomfort, families would insulate the head directly. A wool or cotton cap would retain heat while still allowing normal breathing. These days, modern sleepers can use knit caps, scarves, or even hooded sleepwear, especially in unheated rooms. Bed placement and room ceiling, well, that completed the method. Beds were rarely placed against exterior walls, unless they were insulated with thick drapes, wardrobes, or, layered fabric hangings. Windows would be sealed at night with curtains, blankets, or even newspaper layers. Drafts were blocked with rolled fabric at doors. This was all part of the bed system, not something separate from it. Applying this today means really positioning beds away from cold walls when possible and using curtains or some sort of temporary insulation behind the headboard. So this system works because it relies on physics, not technology. Insulation, compression, moisture control, and airflow management, these are, well, truly timeless principles. In power outages, fuel shortages, or off-grid living, this approach allows for safe sleep in temperatures that would otherwise be, uncomfortable or even dangerous. For a modern household, applying this method might involve layering a foam pad under the mattress, using flannel sheets, placing a thin wool blanket directly over the body, adding a heavier blanket for weight, finishing with a duvet, and, wearing a knit cap. None of this requires specialized gear. It just requires intention and discipline, really. For families, especially those with children or elderly members, this method reduces reliance on space heaters and, lowers fire risk. For preppers, it offers redundancy. The 1940s bed layering method was not about comfort in the modern sense. It was about resilience. Families slept warm because they understood heat as a resource that had to be conserved. That mindset is honestly increasingly relevant again. If you study history seriously, you know that knowledge survives because it works. This method worked then, and it works now. If you found this breakdown valuable, and want more historically grounded practical knowledge that still applies today, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, share this with others who care about real preparedness and real history, and keep these methods alive by using them.